Okay, let's get it started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the SAMPE Q&A session for additive manufacturing, and thank you all for joining. I would like to make you all aware that this session will be recorded and posted on the SAMPE website for on-demand viewing. If you have any questions throughout the duration of the session, please type them in the Q&A feature found on the control panel of your Zoom meeting window. First, I will be the moderator for this session. My name is Hsiao. I work for KAI in Austin, Texas. We are a company that specializes in materials R&D, especially for composite materials. My background is in materials development for polymer nanocomposites and fiber reinforced composites, more recently in the context of additive manufacturing. And I graduated in 2016 with a PhD in material science and engineering from University of Texas at Austin, under the supervision of Dr. Joseph Koo and Dr. Tomar. I've been working for KAI ever since. So for today, we have a total of 6 panelists. And I will be introducing all of them right now. So our first panelist is Dr. Seokpum Kim from Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Pum Kim received his PhD from the Department of Mechanical Engineering at Georgia Tech. He is an R&D staff in the manufacturing demonstration facility at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. His expertise is in computational solid mechanics, and his research focused on additive manufacturing with fiber reinforced composites. The specific research area include the design and process optimization of additive manufacturing and the performance prediction of a printed part with complex toolpaths and geometry. The title of his paper is Geometric Parameter Analysis of Vertically Extruded Pins for Strength Improvement in Additive Manufacturing with Fiber Reinforced Thermoplastic. Our second speaker for today is Kuang-Ting from Hexagon e-Xstream. Kuang-Ting has a master's degree in mechanical engineering from SRTM University and an MBA in marketing from Mumbai University, India. He has worked on composite FEA at Adrian Pro Solutions for a year. Then he has worked for BASF Performance Materials as a CAE application development engineer for 7 years. Also, Kuang-Ting has worked at Solvay Engineering Plastic for 4 years, leading the technical development team. Having acquired all this expertise in engineering plastics, CAE, FEA, injection molding, and additive manufacturing, Kuang-Ting is currently pursuing his PhD in mechanical engineering from the University of Louisville, Kentucky. The title of his paper is Process Sensitivity Study of Metal Fused Filament Fabrication using Finite Element-Based Process Simulation Approach. Now, the third panelist for today is Ravi, Pratap, Singh, Tomar. Ravi currently works at the Joint School of Nanoscience and Nanoengineering at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. Ravi does research in mechanical engineering and materials engineering. The work is related to additive manufacturing and fracture and failure analysis of materials. The title for his paper for today is Process-Induced Variations in Polyjet Printing and Tension Fatigue Loading, Investigations via Homogeneous Three-Dimensional Test Coupons. Thanks, Ravi. Now, the fourth speaker for today is James Brackett from University of Tennessee, Knoxville. James is a graduate student pursuing a doctoral degree at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. He is a member of the Energy Science and Engineering program with a focus on additive manufacturing. His work is on implementing multi-material and functionally graded material structures in large-scale additive manufacturing. The title of his paper for today is The Influence of Processing Parameters on the Transition Zone for Blended Material 3D Printing. Okay. The fifth speaker for today is Professor Kuang-Ting Hsiao from University of South Alabama. Professor Hsiao has received his PhD degree from the University of Delaware in the year 2000 and has been doing research in the areas of RTM, Vartum, nanocomposites, and carbon fiber reinforced polymer composites. His current interests are in the manufacturing and macromechanics modeling of nano-enhanced carbon fiber composites, the integration of new composite materials with new additive manufacturing techniques, and also the design of additive manufacturing process. The title of his paper for today is Carbon Nanofiber Z-Threaded Carbon Fiber Reinforced Composite. Composite laminate parts produced using a magnetic compaction force assisted manufacturing technique. The last speaker for today is Tyler Smith from Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Ms. Tyler Smith is a master's student at the University of Tennessee in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. His primary focus is on large and small scale additive manufacturing with polymer systems. His previous research has been on methods to improve mechanical properties on AM structures, utilizing conductive materials to protect structures or monitor deformation. The title of his paper is Dual Material for Polymer Large-Scale Additive Manufacturing. So that's all the introduction for all of the speakers. Now let's go to the Q&A. The first question I have for Dr. Kim is, what other combination of material would you try in the future?
Thank you for the question. So this the material that we use for this analysis is carbon fiber reinforced PLA. We have used carbon fiber reinforced ABS as well, and in the future we want to try different types of thermoplastics. Here, Tyler in this panelist can be a great, a perfect person to answer or add what I'm saying here. But right, we have glass fiber PP as well, and also for large scale, if we apply this to a large scale, we have carbon fiber ABS, carbon fiber reinforced PSU. So those are the major materials that we want to try.
Okay.
And Tyler, do you want to add on this?
Yes, thank you, Seokpum. So another area of interest that we foresee going into in the future is multi-material pinning. So pinning structures with high strength, high value materials and building base structures with low strength, low value materials to help get a balance between cost and mechanical performance.
Okay. Very interesting.
And how, this is Brianna, I'm just going to pop in for a second. I think Pierre-Yves is, or Yves, excuse me, is stepping in for Qasim.
Okay.
So I think he should be on the line to take those questions.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, Brianna. Okay, so the next question now is for Pierre, I guess, is what does the different values of material properties correspond to in terms of metal particle content? Pierre?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. I wish I had the answer to that question, as Kazim has been doing most of the work on that side. This is a question I can't answer.
Okay.
I'm sure he has the answer, but yeah.
All right. So if you are still in, for the audience, if you're interested in getting the answers, you can refer to the SAMPE website. We'll have a way for you to follow up on these questions later. So the next question is for Ravi. The question is, are there other materials you would like to test and why?
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the question. So there are, like, we were usually doing a lot of research with the fatigue and failure analysis of this additive manufacturing part, because recently it's been a lot of interest in the additive manufacturing part. So we have in my current research, we have investigate the fatigue characteristic in simulated polypropylene material. Then after we extended that research, actually we have already done it, and these are some publication are in pipeline. So we extended this research by integrating some nanoparticle in the current material. So the initial hope was that usually nanoparticle, they have tendency to improve the mechanical property of materials. So I can show you some screen that how we did it. Okay, I think. So anyways, so initially what we did, currently the polyjet technology, what we have, it do not have a tendency to integrate nanoparticle within itself during printing. So we came up with novel idea that we can integrate these nanoparticle from outside during the printing, and integrate the current material with the nanoparticle. So we have tested, then after we extended this to fatigue characterization, but what we realized when we have performed the fatigue characteristic, that the average fatigue life of that material is reduced from the baseline, what we have done fatigue characteristic without adding nanoparticle. And the major cause for that is because we have used carbon nanofiber as an nanoparticle to integrate, and we realized that these carbon nanofiber are stiffer than the polymer, and they are initiating a stress and strain concentration. So due to this stress and strain concentration, it deteriorate the material property. And we have already done that. We have already worked on that material, and that was the one of the material we have tested so far.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you, Ravi.
Mm-hmm.
The next question goes to James. The question is, from the slide for the effect of RPM mixing, it seems that LS2B for the 300 RPM was selected at a point that did not really reach the steady state. If you choose the next point, which is closer to the steady state, how would it alter some of the observation and comparisons?
So if we were to do that and move where we identified that point, one of the first effects we would observe is an increase in the transition zone of blended materials, to the point that it would have the mixing geometry and non-mixing geometry have a similar trend, where the transition zone is smaller at lower RPMs. However, if I were to move that point on the mixing geometry of 300 RPM, I'd also need to follow the same criteria for the non-mixing geometry and move that as well. So the overall transition lengths for the 300 RPM samples would, in that scenario, still match. However, we chose the points we did largely because of the variation seen farther on in the curve, and these points were the first points to fall within that variation.
Okay. Thank you, James.
Okay.
The next question goes to Dr. Hsiao. The question is, what was the most unexpected finding during your testing?
Right. I think the let me show my handout, my slides, and so I can better explain. Okay. So what we are doing in this research, originally try to use we have been doing this ZTCFRP, basically using the nanofiber thread to the carbon fiber prepreg. We got a good improvement in mechanical, thermal, and electrical properties by ORNL VBO process. I mean, so curing the resin take about 2 hours or 4 hours to cure. We had no problem on that and performed very well. And then now we add together with additive manufacturing by using the magnetic impaction. Then we need to change the resin. Okay, additive manufacturing, we use thermal set. So the reason we got it from Hexagon and cure about 45 seconds once you turn on 140 degrees C. Okay. Sounds great, but then you talk about try to mix the nanoparticle and align them and disperse sonication in this high curing rate resin. It's almost like you put a probe, ultrasound probe on, it's cured right away. So it's caused a lot of trouble to handle the material, fast curing material, which is good for the resin for low curing speed for OABBO is fine. But when you move to high curing speed resin for additive manufacturing, it's totally different story, handle the nanoparticles. So we end up using the acetone to slow down the curing so we can disperse it. It was a normal approach for handle nanoparticle in RTM resin or some kind of slow curing resin. Again, it become a problem for fast curing resin. How do you remove the acetone and it won't cure during you remove the acetone? Okay, when you have a lot of acetone resin, it never cure. Okay, but once the acetone be removed, then the molecule getting close to or monomer getting close to each other, they start to react. So there's a threshold that you can remove acetone without curing it. But after that, they start to cure. So we are trying to find a sweet spot and still struggling because if you couldn't remove the acetone completely, then when you cure the acetone, liquid acetone is bent, become bubble, and pop the laminate open. So that tells us some materials we use in other composite manufacturing is fine for them, but the same principle move to additive manufacturing may not work. Okay, so I think that's a surprise we got. And although we still managed to get good results, as you can see, for example, we put acetone there, so use that create a void. We got 10% void in the composite laminate, but we managed that the interlaminar shear strength be still 83% of original strength, which is, let's say, if you talk about traditional composite, use autoclave cure to get 80% ILS reduction of the original strength, you need to have a void control under 2%. But we can use with nanofiber threading, we can have 10% void, reach the 2% void quality and use additive and we can reach the performance of an autoclave 2% void content composite. And the fiber volume fraction is pretty high, about 50%. So that is something interesting and a little bit, I would say, we do, because we understand that the nanomaterial quite well, is OABBO, but we really facing a big challenge by transfer that material technology to additive manufacturing, especially once you change polymer system, everything change. But the polymer for additive need to satisfy the phase reaction speed. So that's the biggest surprise we found, and we still try to figure out how to improve that process. Okay. But I think that probably everybody facing the same situation. Once you transfer traditional material to additive manufacturing, you are going to facing some challenges. Okay. Thank you for the question.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Hsiao, for sharing your insights in this area. So the next question goes to Tyler. The question is, since only materials with similar temperature profiles can be used, can we say even if two different polymers are used in 3D printing, the final printed object would show similar mechanical or related properties due to the similar temperature profile of the polymers?
Thank you for the question. So to answer that, no, you could see drastically different mechanical properties and responses to loading depending on what polymers you use. A really good example of that would be a thermoplastic polyurethane, which is an elastomer, and you use materials such as carbon fiber reinforced ABS or polycarbonate. You can use temperature profiles that meet in the middle of the two optimal printing parameters, and you can start to achieve very elastic or very rigid dominant areas. Or you could start to mess around with stiffened and fiber reinforced materials, whereas other materials will be neat. So you'll start to see changes across it, especially in terms of Z direction and the inner layer strength, depending if it's fiber reinforced or neat in terms of heat retention and layer to layer adhesion. So using those materials, you can start to really customize the structure and create very large parts with mechanical response dominant areas in for each material.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tyler. Now the question goes back to Dr. Kim. The second question is, does this method make sense for denser print patterns with less or near zero void content?
Okay, thank you for the question. I will be sharing my screen. So when you said void, well, to clarify the void, I think in the previous answers from Dr. Hsiao, the void means, it can mean like micro scale void between polymer and as a fiber, or bead small junction between bead and bead. Here, I think the person who asked this question, what he meant by void is the intentional void by structure. So you see a lot of gaps between the infill lines. So so we put Z-pins inside this void so that it has better strength in Z direction. If the question is if there is no void, intentional void in the structure, how we apply this Z-pinning. So I'll interpret the question as such. And if that's the case, then what we can do is instead of having an infill line like this, we can completely make it solid with a few intentional holes. So we can leave out a few holes distributed in the part, and then come back to it. The nozzle can come back to those holes and then extrude the material. Then at the end, it'll be a completely solid part. So we can use it that way. And we have used in a way in that way as well for multi-material Z-pinnings, Z-pin samples. So that's a definite way to go. Another way is if we have a completely solid part without having any intentional holes, then what we can do is we can instead of going to a hole, because there is no hole in the part, we can we can deposit material on the side wall with a robotic arm. But then in that case, it'll be the printer has to have a robotic arm instead of a 3-axis gantry system. So, and the benefit of this Z-pinning when we proposed is we don't need additional equipment. We don't need any additional device to strengthen the Z directional strength. But if there's no hole, and if we deposit material on the side surface, then it should have been printed from the robotic arm system from the beginning. Then it makes sense to use this type of knowledge or technology to completely solid part.
Okay, great, thank you. Thanks for your answers. Now let's move on to the next question for Pierre. The question being, have you done any simulation with controlled chamber temperature? And will the results be any different?
To my understanding, in this current study, there was an actual simulation done with, well, we can control the chamber temperature. So we can either put it at room temperature if needed. And then if the chamber is closed, I believe on the printer used, the chamber was actually opened. But if the chamber was closed and a different printer was to be used, then we can actually use a different temperature. And generally, yes, the results, the final results of the simulation will be different. Since the whole problem is a thermomechanical problem, and there is CT involved as well as layer by layer temperature gradients, the results are most likely going to be different.
Okay, thank you, Pierre.
Mm-hmm.
Now the third question for the third speaker, Ravi, is: do you have concepts on improving the Z direction properties of the 3D printed materials?
Thank you for the question. So, so far we did not work a lot on the improving the Z direction property, but there are many studies, and even in our research, it has been shown that Z direction property for the printed part are weakest. And the reason for it, because Z direction printer, when you print any part in Z direction, they have a very small cross-section area. So that small cross-section area has a potential to delamination because it's perpendicular to the loading direction. So through our experience and work, there are few solution. There are few approach that can be worked out. So when you are printing any complex part, I will probably use the material that has a strong static mechanical property in the Z direction as compared to the material as compared to material that has been printed in X, Y, or YX direction. Or our thought was like, if we can improve the Z direction with reinforcing with the nanomaterial. That was the one of the other approach that we tried. But the nanoparticle, in our cases, they act as a stress razor and deteriorate the mechanical property. But there are other, depending on the material and different nanoparticle structure, there might be some chances that can improve the mechanical property in Z direction. And currently our research group are working in it. So that was a few approach that that we can do in Z direction properties to improve mechanical properties.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ravi. So on this question, I think there are two experts, the panelists, Dr. Hsiao and Dr. Kim. They both mentioned the ways to increase the Z direction strength of the 3D printed parts. So the question, next one for James, is it seems that the carbon fiber content obtained from the ultrasonic acid digestion can have large variations. Why do you switch to the ultrasonic acid digestion from the carbonized nitrogen method? For the CN method, do you use equipment such as TGA?
So I'll answer the second question first. For the CN method, we do not use the TGA due to our sample size. When we print large scale using the system, the big area additive manufacturing system from Cincinnati, the samples can be up to 1/2 inch wide, and there could be variation across the bead or through or up or in the Z direction as well, such that a TGA size sample might not be represented above the area on the scale we need. As such, we used a nitrogen purging furnace that was of a considerable size, and more of a tube furnace, so to speak. And so that is one of the reasons that we switched from the CN method to the ultrasonic method. The nitrogen purging furnace was both a longer process and intended to be more costly and time intensive than the ultrasonic method. Furthermore, with the ultrasonic method, when we originally tested it, the variation that is present in these non-mixing screw geometry samples was not present. And even in this study's mixing geometry transition curves, we saw a lower degree of variation compared to the non-mixing. So with further experimentation, I expect to potentially see a trend develop between the mixing versus non-mixing geometry that could result in that, or it could be the cause of that variation.
Okay, great. Thanks, James.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the question for Dr. Hsiao. The second question is, what type of follow-on work would you like to perform?
Okay, for that, I would like to use my slide to explain that. Let me put the slides on. The research actually including two parts. Okay. The one part is the materials development for nanomaterial development for additive manufacturing. We already mentioned the difficulty when we need to handle this phase curing resin. So definitely material research, be able to have a phase curing resin and adapt, still be able to host this kind of nanostructure to improve the Z directional. Is something we definitely is going to put a lot of effort on. So the challenge will be first, you need to find the host resin. What type of resin you want to choose, and what kind of a chemistry you want to slow down the reaction a little bit, and so you can control. You don't want to cure, so you have enough time to disperse the nanoparticle and do it pre-preg. And then when you want to cure in 45 seconds. So that is not easy job on chemistry side. So we got to figure out the combination, the mixture, or maybe look for various polymer blend to achieve that. So that's one thing. And another one we are going to study is the printing itself. The printing we are using is a magnetic compression force. So let me show you the slides. Okay. So what you see in the figure here is that this is a real printer head we have in the lab, but you do have the other schematic drawing, which is used in the pattern we filed. Okay. So we do have a magnet on the top, a roller, and another magnet under the bottom or steel roller. Okay, and then the carbon fiber pre-preg feed between, and meanwhile you have hot air blow on it, so it cure within 45 seconds when it rolls through. Okay, so control the rolling speed, controlling the temperature, and controlling the compaction force, so you can reach the certain thickness or carbon fiber volume fraction you want to reach. For example, if you are going to use this printer airplane wing skin, you don't want the volume fraction be inconsistent. The airplane become imbalanced. You want to have consistent carbon fiber volume fraction control. And there's a compaction issue when the phase curing happens. So there's a lot of things we want to study, but I think in the end, we would like to see this 3D printing, and together with the good material can compete with continuous CFRP using aerospace traditional. Okay, so there's a lot of work on material and also the printing technique side and knowledge. That's what future we're going to try. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hsiao. So the next question for Tyler is, is it possible to use two extruders on nozzle instead of single extruder design as shown in your slides?
Yes, that is a possibility. However, the consequence of using that, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. The consequence of using a dual extruder system is on a gantry size. One, extruders between the motor mounts, cooling, as well as having room to access the extruder can take up to 2 to 3 feet. So adding a second extruder is going to take up a considerable amount of the gantry space as well as weight. These extruders can weigh up to 100 to 150 pounds. And when moving them around at high speeds, 11, 12 inches per second, the accelerations and decelerations become very large. So minimizing the extra weight and minimizing the amount of build space lost is crucial for large scale AM practices, which is why it's preferred to use a dual feed mechanism or a feed mechanism up above the extruder versus adding on additional additional extruder systems. However, there's a downside. When you have two extruders, you can do high temp, low temp materials, as well as you could start to do very interesting temperature profile mix and matches. Once again, once you start getting to high temp, you have to now worry about material staying within an extruder and degrading over time. So there would be a significant amount of purge that would have to be used in between builds with each individual extruder.
Excellent. Thank you, Tyler. So looks like we still have some time. Now I would like to ask each one of you a generic question. So it'd be the same question for all of you. So the question is, what would you say was one of the most surprising or interesting discoveries with your research? Let's begin with Dr. Kim.
Well, the most surprising discovery. Well, for this work, we have not done we have not shown a mechanical test results of this, but we saw a increase in strength for this carbon fiber reinforced PLA sample, and also we saw a very high strength increase in multi-material as well. So those are the main very surprising discoveries or from this research. I did not really include in this particular presentation, but that will be shown public in the future. But it's gonna be exciting.
Okay, thanks for sharing, Dr. Kim. Now that's Pierre. Do you have anything to share with us?
I wish I had. Unfortunately, as I'm not the main person who conducted that work, it'd be kind of misplaced for me to add anything. But maybe one thing is more on my side, what I discovered, and a little bit more about the simulation of those processes. It was very interesting to see a process that we've seen applied to fiber reinforced or plain polymer materials applied to a material with metal reinforcement or metal or alloys with polymer binder. So I'm kind of excited to see more of that work being conducted by University of Louisville, who's been very keen in sharing and working with us and partnering with Hexagon and Extreme Engineering for this.
Great. Thank you, Pierre.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is Ravi.
So yeah, definitely in research sometimes there are surprising results that discover a lot. So one of the things I want to tell you, like we were using simulated polypropylene here in our research. So let me share you a screen that give little idea about how that polypropylene material is formed. So here you see like the polymer is like a polyjet printer has a capability of mixing 2 or 3 more material, and that when a material form with the combination of 2 base photopolymer, we call it as a digital material. So here you see this polypropylene, that is the one polypropylene material which form with the combination of Vero White and Tango Black Plus material. So Vero White is rigid material and Tango Black Plus is a rubbery material. So depending on the concentration, how much you are using each of the material, there are different kind of combination, and depending on property and application, that's how you call them digital material. So in this polypropylene material, when we see the microstructure, how they are used, what initial thought was they are mixing as a molecular level. They have a homogeneous mixing of these polymers. But when we see the microstructure, we realize that it's rather than molecular mixing, is introduction of one polymer into the other, or you can call it like introduction of particle into another, or you can call it, it's like composite material where like matrix infuses with the fiber. So in this additive manufacturing, we see that like when you use different combination of material that can act as a conventional composite material, and similarly it affects the mechanical property of additive manufacturing part. That was the one we came across recently. Thank you.
That's very interesting, Ravi. The next speaker, James, do you have anything to add here?
Well, if I was going to talk about what was the most surprising, it would be the variation from the last question. In all of our other tests thus far, we had seen a very consistent, smooth transition curve over the blended region. So to see any samples exhibit such drastic variation in the blended zone was a surprise, and it's one of several reasons why we intend to investigate further and see if that is a common trend or if there's some other factor at play.
Okay, great. Now, Dr. Hsiao, I think you already talked something on this.
Yeah, I think the surprising, we do see the possible future potential of this additive manufacturing compared with the traditional composite manufacturing process. I'm talking from the ground of the RTM or Vartan process, because I do that research in the past. For those process, you make a part, you need to have mold and you hand lay up, or some robot lay up the fabric. Then you need to test the vacuum leak, basically, make sure nothing leaking, and then start to pour resin in or inject resin in and cure it. And after that, you need to clean the mold, which is a very painful job to create your mold. So if you cure a part, even you already have a mold built, you cure a part and clean the mold, it will take you about almost 8 hours. Okay, and then you can cure another part. So, but additive manufacturing is so fast. The same one, you can cure that within about 5 minutes. And you don't need, the good thing is you don't need to clean the mold. That's a good thing that my student like that part. You don't need to clean the mold. So, and you don't need to waste the vacuum bag, other material. So there's a future for this. But sure, the quality is an issue and the material development issue. So the surprising is that there's, in terms of time spending wise, the additive manufacturing really can have a faster production time than molding process in composite. Maybe in plastic injection is different, but composite resin infusion always very slow. So these do have the competition edge. But sure, another surprise, when we try to translate the already developed technology from the other composite manufacturing process to additive manufacturing, the material challenge is more than I thought in the beginning. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hsiao. That's an interesting point, because traditionally people think that the production rate of additive manufacturing is slower than the traditional manufacturing method, but that's a very interesting point. Thank you, Lester. The last speaker, Tyler.
I would say the most surprising item that we have is one, just how effective multi-material systems can be. We recently did a part on BAM that would traditionally weigh about 500 to 600 pounds, and utilizing sparse fills and foams with high expansion rates, we were able to drop that weight down to about 250, 300 pounds. As well as you can start to reduce the build time, because now your layer heights for foams are about double the layer height of your base polymer. So if you print a rigid shell out of, let's say, carbon fiber ABS, your layer height's 0.15 inches, whereas the layer height for your foam is about 0.3 inches. So now instead of having to print infill patterns for every layer, we only have to print them every other layer for low load-bearing structures. Another really nice surprise is how another surprise we've noticed is the difficulties between using a blender on BAM, shuffling of pellets and shuttling them from point A to point B over a long distance can lead to mismatches and uniformity along mixtures of very complex pellets. So as small pellets and large pellets, heavy and lightweight pellets travel through a very long tube, you can start to see variations within blends that occur due to the different weights and pellet sizes. And trying to solve that has been a very surprising and interesting time.
Okay. Very interesting findings. Thank you, Tyler. I think now it's about the time to conclude this session. To finish this session, I would like to thank you all for participating in this session. If you have additional questions, please feel free to fill out the form on the track landing page on the SAMPE North America website, and SAMPE will follow up with you on that. Make sure to check out the content being released next week for the emerging technology and inspection and repair tracks within the virtual series. That will conclude this session. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Great
Thank
stuff.
you.